Welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. We're doing these like every couple of weeks when we talk about the new moon and the full moon. That's kind of a good way to get a handle on what the astrology is up to. And as I think everybody knows, the astrology is up to quite a lot these days. We just have so much going on, and we see it reflected in our current events. We see it reflected in the fires in California, which is a terrible, terrible situation, especially in Oregon right now. We see it reflected in the storms that are being dealt with also in the Gulf Coast, and in general with climate change and global warming, which is definitely a factor right now, in addition to the social justice movement that's huge that's in this country, the COVID emergency, which is huge that's in this country, the economic devastation caused by COVID, which is huge, which is happening right now. And to some extent, this is worldwide. We do have other COVID outbreaks that are kind of unexpected. Just when things were getting kind of buttoned up in Europe, well, it turns out they relaxed a little bit, had some tourism, had some opening and people getting together a little bit more, and they're seeing outbreaks in Spain, even in parts of Norway. It's absolutely a worldwide phenomenon. And we can see it, let's take a look at the chart. We can see it reflected in the current skies with this Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which is still moving through. So here's the chart for the new moon, which is 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, at least on the west coast here in California. Of course, it would be 7 a.m. if you're on the east coast. It would be further later still in Europe. What we want to say mostly about this new moon is to continue pointing out how strong the Saturn-Pluto conjunction really is. Saturn-Pluto, you can see it right here at the top of the chart, drawing within a 3-degree orb of connection right now. And actually, they're getting ready to station. At the end of September, Saturn stations direct on the 28th. Also, a few days later, in the beginning of October, Pluto. And we have already the station of Jupiter. Now, this was officially the 12th. We're looking at this on the 16th as I'm doing this, and tomorrow will be not much different. It's only moving very, very slightly. So this is a stationary, although it's direct in motion now, it's not retrograde any longer. Jupiter is stationary in the sky, which makes it strong. And as Jupiter is here sitting so strong, look, it's connected to both Neptune and to Mercury. The connection to Mercury is a square. Mercury is at 17 degrees of Libra. And the 17-degree mark of Libra is actually, the Mercury degree mark in Libra is actually 17 degrees and 28 minutes. And whereas Jupiter, standing still in the sky, is 17 degrees of Capricorn and 26 minutes. So we have a very powerful situation here with this potent, very close, entirely close square with Jupiter and Mercury. Now, what does that tell us? I mean, one thing is the emphasis on the media. Mercury tells us that as far as mundane astrology is concerned, the media are more and more important, reporting the news, questioning the fake news, questioning the news reports as fake news. There's just so much going back and forth, which brings Neptune into the picture as well. An inconjunct or quincunx aspect for Mercury to Neptune, as well as this stationing Jupiter, stationing to direct motion, which is sitting there sextile. So Neptune is quite a bit in this configuration, as well as Saturn, as well as Uranus. And when I say Saturn, it's also Saturn-Pluto because of this very close. And then we have the T-square I've been talking about quite a bit, which is from new planets, Eris and Haumea, opposite each other, very close still. It's only like less than 2 degrees, or about 2 degrees, I think, between Eris and Haumea. And Haumea has to do, remember, Haumea has to do with really how we're connected to nature, to each other through nature. Nature is a part of the human experience, as Jung was getting at when he realized that the unconscious was a vast dark places within there. There's kind of evil thoughts, and there's good thoughts, and we have all kinds of parts of ourselves that are in the unconscious that Jung was bringing forth to examine and to look at, which is difficult because you're looking at yourself and you're looking at your psyche in a way that's very difficult to suss it out. You have to really tune in. Intuition helps. That really is part of nature. It's a natural connection to everything, and transpersonal for that matter, which has been explored in modern psychology beyond Jung. And here we have Haumea, which represents nature and represents it. Nature as a spiritual path, the concept of natural law. And I like to connect that up with Eris, which they are connected in the sky. They're making a T-square, very close T-square still. Saturn is at 25 degrees of Capricorn, so there's only a degree difference there in the square. And meanwhile, we have the midpoint of, is it about 25 also, of Eris with Mars coming backwards. Remember, Mars now is retrograde, coming backwards towards Eris. Now, interestingly, when Mars was going through in this direction and made its close conjunction with Eris, as it was slowing down, as it was getting ready to turn around at 28 degrees, this happened on the 9th of September last week. That was when the fires broke out. The retrograde was the 9th of September, but before that, the conjunction of Mars on its way to its retrograde moment was actually on August 17th, which is exactly when all the lightning fires got started in California. So what do you think about that? So Mars is obviously a fire emblem. It rules Eris, which is a fire sign, the first fire sign, the cardinal fire sign. So it makes sense that there would be a fiery outcome. And it just makes us realize there's symbolic levels of this. There's emotional fieriness, that comes when anger comes out. That's a fiery thing. That's been something that we've been subject to some extent with the Mars. The concentration of Mars, and turned inward as well, looking to our inner world. That's part of what goes on when we have these strong planetary retrogrades, interplanet retrogrades I'm referring to, like Mars, for example, which just happened on the 9th, and there was further fires when it retrograded on the 9th. That was another flare-up in the California fires. That's when all these fires in Oregon got started too. So we could see that operating on different levels. It's operating on the outer world level of just the fire element and fire itself. It's operating on an internal element in terms of fiery disposition, and anger can come up from bottled, especially if you've been kind of stuffing your anger, so bottled up, so like a volcano, it comes out. So then when Mars is connected to Pluto, then you see a lot of that. That's a potential for inner anger to come out, something to be aware of, something to use discernment about. Try to remember that you're not angry, you're almost never angry for the reason that you think you are. It comes from earlier trauma usually, which has been something that you wind up getting triggered. And as Carolyn Casey likes to point out, when you're being triggered, you're being like a gun. Is that what you want to be? Maybe you could be instead interested and curious about what's going on with that. What is that emotion coming up? What is that that's arousing me? So we have it all operating on many levels, the symbolism and the way astrology works. Something to realize, and in this combination of Eris and Mars, we have about 25 degrees. In the new moon, which happens at 25 degrees of Virgo, we have a perfect trine to the Saturn position at 25 degrees of Capricorn. So we just have so much happening in the sky right now. And when we don't want to forget about Uranus is also triggered in this new moon, because what we have is a perfect sesquiquadrate, it's called. It's a 135 degree aspect. It means 45 degrees off of the opposition. And that's a powerful connection as well. It's considered a minor aspect. But that is perfect because, you see, if we add 15 degrees to this position in Taurus, we come to the 120 degree mark, which is 125, which is 25 degrees rather, which then we have exact perfect trine of 120 degrees to the 25 degree. So this is very close. You can put the mouse on it too in the time passages software, of course. Maybe I should do that. So we can see that the Uranus is 0.3 degrees in its aspect, which is actually forming, getting closer and closer. Because of the retrograde of Uranus, we can consider that getting closer. As this moves forward, this moves backward. So anyway, we have a very strong Uranus, is what I'm trying to say. We have a very strong Saturn. And those two are antithetical, and they represent conservative and progressive forces. And we're seeing, aren't we, the collision of conservative and progressive forces just happening so directly in the society, and we're seeing it in our own lives, right? Because we know that we're in the midst of transformation. We know that what we have to do in terms of societal evolution is up to each individual person as well. Every individual contributes to the evolution of society. And it's not just by convincing others, it's just there's a vibration that goes out when you take your stand. So that's what Eris is all about. Eris is a feminine warrior for soul intention. It goes to depth. It also goes to a deep intention and making it happen. And strong Eris, they have a propensity for making it happen. You can see it in all the research I've done. The book that I wrote is called The 10th Planet. The evidence that was in the 10th planet, of course, is what I could amass at the time. But ever since the book has come out, I see the evidence piling up all around me more and more. Perfect example being Greta Thunberg. I didn't have to look at her chart to know that she had strong Eris. Here she is, speaking truth to power in a very violent and determined way, addressing the leaders of the world and telling them they're screwing up at the UN when she's 15 years old. And of course she does have strong Eris. I mean, she has it with, it's square the sun, and it's the subject of a yod between Maki Maki and Mars, with a partile connection to Maki Maki, which is environmental activism. So there you have it. It's just so characteristic and clear. And it's also in a grand trine with Pluto and Jupiter. Eris is in her chart. So these are the things that we can see that's happening, and it just tells us a little bit about what's going on. The fact that Mercury is involved with Neptune right now means a lot, because there's so much question of deception, self-deception, deception by others. Conspiracy theories are running rampant. Some people on the right are running away with the QAnon, which I think is a little exaggerated myself. That's my own personal opinion. But there's myths all around. You have the myths of progress too. Everybody's got their own way of looking at things and their own way of talking about it in a way that is very persuasive and convincing of their own point of view. Everybody's saying hooray for their side. That's what the 60s song goes, right? Got to stop, got to look around, see what's going down, use discernment. And of course, Saturn is very good at that. So Saturn has a couple of factors. The fact that Saturn is so strong in all these lunations. One thing I'm noticing is it takes a while to get something done. You think you've got it done, but then you have to go and do it again because obstacles arose. So working through those obstacles, though, is actually a positive, because it does bring a lot of lessons with that. It brings determination, builds character. Once you get it done after the third, fourth time, you've really gotten it done and you really understand what's going on with it. Or another thing they say, and this is also from Carolyn Casey actually, that the water in a ditch, if it's running too fast, it doesn't do the irrigation, the water doesn't sink into the soil. Saturn slows things down. It makes it so that we have a real chance to pay attention to what's going on, to really understand the process, like the water in the ditch running slowly that has a chance to penetrate the soil. So these are the things that we're living through, and I think almost I don't have to say some of this because it is so obvious, isn't it? Oh, except that, that feeling of helplessness is a mirage. That's another mirage. Sometimes with all the things that are happening and all the governmental controls in one direction or another, it feels like it's out of our hands, and nothing could be further from the truth. We are each of us individually powerful, and en masse, the, let's say, population of a particular nation, or the world population for that matter, is the most potent force. The government can't really do anything if the people have a movement that they want to express. And that's what we're seeing in this social justice movement. There's been a lot of changes. The laws have changed. We see Black Lives Matter painted on the streets of many cities. Police have been, the idea is to complement the action of the police with actions of social workers that are able to better handle the situations sometimes that are psychological in nature. Somebody's upset about something, domestic disturbance or whatever, rather than sending police with guns into that situation. So all these things are happening. The world is changing. The situation in this country is changing. We're seeing that these configurations keep building. I wish I could tell you that it's getting better. But let's just look at the new moon of October just briefly for 1 second. And what do we have? We have all of, you can see all the red. We have all this huge T-square, augmented now by the sun and moon position at 23 degrees of Libra, just chiming right into the Saturn-Pluto. And we have still the Mars retrograde close to Eris. So this opposition, which includes an opposition to the position of Haumea, this goes on, so, and this leads up right to the election as well, of course. And then the new moon of November, which is around the late on the 14th, early on the 15th in this coast. So the 15th is just like a real clear signal to me that the triple then of Jupiter that we see right here, of Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn together, is actually in November pretty close. I mean, they don't always touch. They don't actually touch, is what I'm trying to say. But and then Jupiter and Saturn move on to the 0 degree point of Aquarius, and that's on the December 21st winter solstice, and that's a very powerful thing because that's the what they used to call the Great Conjunction, the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction, for the first time in air signs, for the first time in a series of 21. A series of 200 years is what I'm trying to say, in air signs. There was one exception to that, 1981, there was an air sign, but that's considered like just a toe in the water, and then it went back to Earth, the conjunction of 2000, and then the conjunction of 2020 is what we're in now, which is the first time it stays in air for the next couple hundred years, actually. So that's a big switch, and you could call it the age of Aquarius. You could call it the age of global communications. You could call it the age of humanity, and seeing the entire human race as one connected situation, a family, if you will. You could go on from that and say that there's a family of creatures. All creatures on the earth are fellow creatures on this planet, and we're all working together. There's a way that the ecology of the entire world contributes, every part contributes to the other. And there's a way of looking at the entire globe, the earth itself, as a spiritual entity, the Gaia principle. And we're seeing the strains. We're seeing that our civilization has gotten out of control in certain ways, and including the fact that the greenhouse gas emissions are causing the global warming, which is getting increasingly bad, and that's why we're seeing all these fires. Because every summer is hotter than the summer before. We're seeing record fire season this year. It was a record fire season last year. Up until that time, it was a record fire season, I think, the year before that. I mean, it's been, certainly the temperatures have been the hottest every summer these last few years. So something to realize, something to take action. And what kind of action? Well, it's obvious that kind of action that has to be taken to correct climate change is action on the part of everybody. Everybody has to be ready to sign up and do this, and which is where Eris comes in, because Eris has to do with finding your deep values and really responding to that and saying, this is where my bottom line is, this is what I stand for, this is in the midst of all of the confusion and all of the false statements and what's fake and what's not fake news. This is where I draw the line. This is what I see as important. This is where I make my stand. This is what I act upon. And really, it's time for everybody to act. In a fire situation, guess what? Everybody is involved. Everybody has to act. I mean, the people have to defend their homes to whatever extent they can. They have to help their neighbors evacuate. They have to do the evacuation themselves in some case, whatever the situation is. We're all taking care of each other. And that's true with the COVID, I mean, that's, again, the situation with the spreading of the germs. If you social distance, if you're responsible about your breath, what are you breathing on? If you stay 6 feet apart, if you keep your mask on in situations which require it, and that also reminds you that you're in that situation where you have to be careful with your breath, be careful where you touch. Don't shout in somebody's face, not at all, because who knows who's a carrier? You can have an asymptomatic carrier. These are things that require each individual to step up to the plate and be their own hero. That's what I say. Everyone right now is their own hero. It's like that we are the ones that we've been waiting for, right? And here we are. And it's not such a bad thing. It's time. It was time for things to change. It's time to make a stab at correcting these situations that have gotten out of hand, partly through apathy. Social apathy, political apathy is a problem because the people that are emblazoned with their sense of purpose and they want to accomplish things, they don't always have the right thing in mind. The other thing with Eris, besides the fact that you have to tune in to what your deepest value is, what your desires at the base level are, as we look into this T square Eris opposite Haumea, making the square to the Saturn Pluto at the top of the chart, at the top of the natural chart that puts Capricorn at the top of the chart. What we have to recognize is Haumea plays a role in this. Haumea has to do with nature as a spiritual path and natural law, and recognizing there are some actions that are not okay, and there are some actions that are in the best interest of everybody, the whole system, the whole interconnected system that we're all part of, and that we have to just recognize and take care of on our own. We're all on our own, and we're all together, and we're all in this together, as many people have said in these times also. But you see the cry going out from the Democrats. Everybody has to stand up and be counted at this time. From the Republicans, it's time for everybody to pull together and make this happen and stand up for what you believe in. Everybody's saying it. And it just goes to the entire society, the entire social situation that we're in, the entire transformational passage of this key year of 2020 that we're in. So that's a little bit of an optimistic assessment. We don't have the powerlessness, we have the power. Maybe it's fitting with this strong Jupiter that we have in this configuration that's imbuing our thoughts with our thoughts of progress and what we can do in a positive way, how we can improve the society. The higher note of Capricorn is to improve things, improve the whole social situation. And that's what we have to adhere to. We have to really keep our heads high, keep our actions, keep our hearts pure, and keep our actions clean and dedicated and directed. This isn't the time to sit back. This is the time to stand up and be counted. And I think we're getting that message. So that's really all I had. We can wind up now. Get back to the other view. So I do want to leave you with a sense of optimism. It is really an opportunity, through all this difficulty and through the deaths that we're seeing and through the situation we're in and through combining our energies to beat back the virus and to get back in control of our economy and our lives. It's a struggle that's worth doing, isn't it? The Chinese proverb, "May you live in interesting times," or "May you live in dangerous times." I'm not sure which it is, but that's what we got, and we can make the most of it. You just have to keep the faith. So keep faith with yourself, and keep faith with the universe to support you through this. And we'll talk again in a couple more weeks. So long.